Hey everyone, welcome back to our 3 p.m. session. This is our last session of WordCamp Kent. I can't believe it. It's been amazing. And in this session, we have themes of the future with Eileen. So we're going to go out with a bang here. And kudos to Eileen. We've had some great space themed presentations, and Eileen's is one of the top. So we're going to get to know Eileen here in a minute. She is Eileen Violini, which I think is very fun to say. She's a design engineer that creates user experiences and interfaces for WordPress websites and products. She has over 7 years of experience building WordPress solutions, and she currently puts her skills to work as a partner at Sidetrack Studio and at wpblockshop.com. So welcome, Eileen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here today, and thanks to the organizing team for doing such a great job bringing everything together. Again, it's just Eileen. Excuse me. I'm with Sidetrack Studio, and today we're going to be covering themes of the future. We're going to be doing a little bit of everything today. It's a really big talk. There's a lot of information that I've included in my slide deck. Everything is available afterwards on GitHub, including the code samples, a lot from the developer handbook and from other sources. And it's really meant to be one big resource, connect lots of different pieces from lots of different places so that you have a handbook of sorts to be able to go back and refer to. And I'm going to be constantly updating this information over the next couple of months because a lot of what we're doing right now in themes is changing. Everything is changing as we're working through it. But the most exciting part about this, the thing that gets me really, really excited to talk to you today, is the fact that there is a lot that's changing. There's a lot to learn, and it makes it really, really fun to just dig in there and figure out what's coming next. So Sidetrack Studio is a small consultancy, myself and my partner, and 4 years ago, after a WordCamp in a parking lot, we were thinking, what could we do with WordPress if the user was able to build websites on their own, if it wasn't such a learning curve for people who didn't know how to code to come in and build a site? Because I'm sure a lot of you have had that experience of the first installation for WordPress, and you got the hello world, and it was not the page that you thought you were going to get when you installed your theme. And that's a real pain point for a lot of users, and something that WordPress now is really trying to make different so that when users come in and use WordPress for the first time, they can get up and running quickly. So even though a lot of what is now is changing, it's changing for a good reason, and there are a lot of great things happening. So again, it's just Eileen. I'm a design engineer. What's a design engineer? I'm a designer who codes a little bit, learning more and more every day. So, and let's get started. The new frontier. What do themes look like today? How can we get started getting our themes ready for Gutenberg? And what's going to happen in the next couple months, the next year, the next 2 years? So a few months ago, there was a pop-up stream, and Matt said on the future of themes, I think that we'll always have something called themes and something like the theme directory for users, that it's key that there's something there called a theme that allows them to get ahead on beautiful design and that they don't have to do something from scratch. So a lot of what's happening now in Gutenberg, a lot of people look at it and say, wow, gee, the user's going to be able to do everything now. They can just drag and drop blocks and create layouts. And all of that's going to be true, but there will still be a lot that needs to go on in the back end in order for them to be able to do that. And some of the things that I'm going to be able to talk to you about today are, what is it that we can do as theme developers to we talk a lot about what we design for the front end user, But this is going to be a lot of what we can design for the admin user, for those people that we are delivering our sites to and making sure that they have a great experience being able to get their content onto the web. So the big question, as this space evolves, how can we work with and what's available today for making our themes? So, and how do we prepare for those things? You'll hear a lot of people starting to talk about in the next couple of months, progressive enhancements. Hot topic, very, very big, but there's not a lot there in terms of general thinking. Everybody's kind of just pulling this issue apart right now and getting into taking a look at what those progressive enhancements can be. So it's an important area to keep an eye on. So when we look at our themes today, we have themes in the theme repository that are classic, that show the classic editor. And we have themes that are Gutenberg, or it might be Gutenberg ready, or a theme shop has gone back and taken a classic editor theme and added supports into it so that it can take advantage of Gutenberg. So I'm using the term Gutenberg enabled to mean anything that takes advantage of Gutenberg theme supports for block rendering in the editor and on the front end. And that's a really key concept, because what we're doing now today, we're not designing just something for the front end. We're bringing a parity between what we see in the editor window and the front end of the screen, so that there's not as many questions in terms of what things are really going to look like. A few themes on the repository that I like to refer to as Gutenberg-enabled themes. Go from GoDaddy, which is here on the left-hand side of the screen. Chaplin by Anders Noren, who's one of the people behind the 2020 theme. I learned so much from all of his themes, going in and looking at them and pulling them apart and learning how they work. So they're really worthwhile to take a look at. And Atomic Blocks. That was one of the earlier all Gutenberg themes that came out, and I think these are all great themes to download, install, take a look at, see how they're doing things, and then looking at possibly using your own starter theme to add these types of items into. It's really interesting to note that WP Tavern reported recently that out of nearly 7,500 themes in the WordPress repository, 7,500, big number, out of 7,500, 132, only 132 lists Gutenberg blocks as one of their features. So that is not a lot of themes out there in the repository. So take a look at, if you want to future-proof your site and put something on today that's going to last you and not be something that you have to rewrite from scratch, be mindful of what you're selecting to use. So over the course of this presentation, I have created a fictional real estate agency, and this is what a page from their site would look like. And we're going to apply some of the techniques and solutions that are available for us to work in today to Side Street Realty. And this is an example of a post template. So the future is now. What can we do today? We can start by adding theme supports. And this is a really long section. I'm going to cover part of theme supports and then jump ahead because we have a lot to cover. So the basics, the block editor provides new functionality to take advantage of Gutenberg blocks. And we want to add theme supports into our themes to take advantage of that functionality. So some of the things that we can add include the editor color palette, the editor text size palette, responsive embeds, front end editor and back end admin editor styles, dark mode. And here you can see an example of a theme that I was working in, actually two themes that I was working in over the past couple months. And what you're going to notice here is these themes were really very, very similar. They're white, white backgrounds, but when we go back and take a look at them, you can see the fonts are different. And when we flip it over, our blocks that are there, not a lot changes in the content. I mean, this is so great. How many times have you gone to change out a theme, and when you changed it over, everything else changed? Now with blocks, with the content being stored in post content for these blocks, when we switch out the theme, we're going to have less problems for updating things, and that's part of the reason why we're doing all of this right now. So one of the first things that I did in getting a theme ready for Gutenberg was to add the editor color palette. The color palette that comes with some themes, like 2020, is is restricted to a black and a carnation red color and some grays, and it's easy to change that out and provide a way for your end user to only select the colors that you want them to select. The block editor has opt-in features, so they provides opt-in opinionated styles that you can access. One of those items is wide alignment. So the WordPress, the editor window now is getting bigger and bigger, and blocks have the ability to be wide aligned or full aligned, or within the context of a certain area of the window. To take advantage of your block, to be able to show it as align wide, you need to have this support with some CSS in your theme. If you don't have it, it's not a big deal. Nothing's going to break, but when you won't have the ability on a block to make it wider than what you need it to be able to make it appear across the full screen. There are default block styles. So those are core blocks, include default styles. A lot of people talk about the quote block. So you have, sometimes it has a bar or it has large quote marks on it. And this is one area that you can opt in to use. Floats, block color palettes. So there are certain blocks that will allow you to have their own color palette associated with them. And this is a way that you can add those colors there. When we look at the color palette, the deep dive, when we're writing that code, the name is a human readable label. The slug is a unique identifier. And color is the hexadecimal code. So those are the three things that we need to be showing for our color palettes. We can disable custom colors. A lot of what we might want to do when we deliver a theme to a client is to make sure that we've kind of made it stable enough that they can't hit something and change everything. So we might want to, I like to call it providing them guide rails or design. It's your design style guide. Block gradient presets now are available, so you can add have blocks that have gradients in them. And the CSS for the block gradient presets. And I'm going to skip ahead here from theme supports after this deep dive. So for your gradient, again, the name is the human readable label. The gradient is the CSS value. And the slug is the unique identifier. So please refer back to my slides here. Theme supports, the key areas that I always look at using include providing the colors and the wide align. Those are two quick hits that you can do to get in and have your theme be enabled. And it's something really fairly easy to do in the code. After theme supports, the next thing that we can do to enable our themes to be usable for Gutenberg are to include block templates. What are block templates? They are a set of predefined blocks with the content defined in the editor and stored in post content. And why would you want to use a block template? Block templates allow theme builders to provide the admin user, again, with those guide rails that we talked about earlier, to add content. So block templates are similar to the page templates that we use today, but they're a little bit different in that they are, we access them programmatically, and we can add block templates into smaller pieces of pages, as well as create a, that traditional page template that we've always thought about. This is an example of what it looks like for an admin user with a page template active. And you can see they could very quickly get in here now and add the type of content that you want them to be able to add. In this case, we have a website for a realty company, and they have their primary thing that they're doing, they're creating posts for all of their listings. And this is a page that will allow them to add the title for the listing, the picture for the property, a subtitle, some features, and a gallery. So block templates versus page templates. Again, block templates impose structure on the post content area. All of this area in here is what's going to be stored in post content, and all of these blocks are adding into post content. They can be used independently or within current page templates, which means you could access them through the inspector controls under page template. So declaring the block template, we can use PHP to associate the block template with a post type, or we can use JavaScript to create block templates as a freestanding block that can be inserted anywhere. To do it via PHP, this is a little code snippet. This creates a function that adds an array of blocks for the admin users to populate using post type object. And a little trick here is if you wanted to add this code to a page and not to all of the posts on your site, but you wanted it to add it to all of the pages on your site, you change post here to page, and all of those blocks would appear every time you need to add that, need to add a post to the site. So in JavaScript, and this is what makes it really exciting, that same array or list of blocks that are all nested together, we can use them within JavaScript to create our own block. So a block that appears in the block inserter that you can add to any page. This would be really handy for a call to action. I know one of the first things I did was I used reusable blocks for a call to action for a client, and then they wanted to A/B test, and they have some call to actions on some page say one thing and another call to action say something else. And I wasn't able to do that with reusable blocks, but creating your own block of nested blocks will allow you to get there quickly. This example is a little bit different than the version that is in the WordPress handbook right now. This is a little more up to date and uses WP scripts. And what it gets you then is a block that can be inserted anywhere on the site. It makes it really super easy for your admin users. Another great way, and this is my favorite way to work with adding block templates, is to assign them to a custom post type. So if you're thinking about this realty site, wouldn't it be great? We're not going to tell them to add a post or go up to new, create post. We're going to add in there a way that they can just add a new property listing. And it's going to have a custom post type adding in a function with an array of all of those nested blocks that we talked about. And one of the great things about doing this is that we now have control over what they're going to put on the page and allowing them to add things or take things away. So if you think about that, our realty client, they have a marketing director who handles their social media and adds things to the site, and they may be able to go in and drop in lots of blocks and change things, but some days they might want to have just one of the listing agents go in and add a block. So you don't want that listing agent to be overwhelmed with everything that they have to add to a page, or oops, I deleted a block by accident. By doing it with this through the custom post type, we can add attributes that will allow us to lock those blocks in place. So one of the first attributes is show and rest true. That's what's going to make the block available in the block editor for the user to be able to add content into. So very important. You can add placeholder text. So for our realty agency, we want to let people know this is the place where you're going to put the listing price. You can align the content. So here we're going to align that block left. Template lock all, again, what we were just talking about. This locks the block so the admin can't move them or insert other blocks. Only what we're specifying in this CPT is going to be a block that's allowed on a page. And then template lock insert will allow a user to, they can't insert new blocks, but they can move the blocks around in the template if they want to. So here's what that looks like. That user, admin user coming in, we've built the property CPT, and they can see if you click on the edges of those blocks, they can't move them. They didn't get the indicator to move them up or down. But we can very quickly go in, add the content that we need. Including all of the pictures. And we really very, very quickly have a listing page that's up and ready to go. How simple is that for that end user, for that admin user to get all of that content on the page? And what we're looking at here, this is what I was talking about earlier when we said we design a lot for the end user, for the person on the front side of the screen. Now we're looking at how can we decide or design this user interface in the back end for our admin user. And this is one of the greatest things that we can give them, is the ability, those guide rails, to make it easy for them. So we can, it's a really modular way for design. As designers, we talk about atomic design, and we have molecules and atoms, and working with blocks in this way, we can start to see those modular components of our site. And it just provides a better user experience for our admin, just being able to get everything up there very quickly. So I love block templates. I think they're awesome to use, and it's something that you can use right now. And as we move forward, they're still going to be available in terms, they'll be available, there might be additions and changes, but are different ways to call the code, but this is how we're going to be able to get those blocks into one place on our site. Another way that we can do this is with block patterns. And I'm going to put the big experimental, I should have a big blinking sign here. Block patterns are a little bit experimental at this point. They are new and noteworthy. They are patterns of predefined block layouts for a page, and they're ready to insert. So creating block patterns It's a new API introduced in Gutenberg 7.8. So we are at 8.1 or 8.2, and that is 7.8 came out in April. It's experimental and subject to change, but it's available right now. If you install the Gutenberg plugin, you will have access to block patterns. It's not a part of core now. It's only available in the plugin, but it's due to hit soon. So we use register block pattern. It's the function that receives the name of the pattern of the first argument and the array of the property of the patterns as the second argument. And it must include a human readable title and the raw HTML content for the actual pattern. And when we say the raw HTML content, that is the code that we see when we flip the Gutenberg editor from visual mode to code, and we see all the blocks declared. So to register a block pattern, this is the function. At the moment, I've been working with this by dropping this into a customizations plugin and turning it on in sites. That to me feels good for the moment because it's an easy way for me to turn it off if something breaks. When we move forward, I imagine that I will want to keep this within the theme somewhere, either in functions.php or in a patterns folder that you would be able to call and use these patterns. So when we look at that raw HTML, that's what we're seeing here as the second part of this argument. So we see this particular block has a group with a container. It has some columns, and within those columns, it also has the listing sections and the heading features, etc. So this is what it looks like currently. We see this is what we've created, and we can access it under, and again, this is the Gutenberg plugin. This is not what you would see in core at the moment. There's a new left-handed screen, and there's a place to get at blocks, and there's also a place to get at patterns. And there are several patterns that ship with the WordPress, with the Gutenberg plugin at the moment. Testimonials is one of them. And this is the plugin, or this is the pattern that I've created, which is a full property listing. So it's the titles for each of these are at the bottom of that pattern. So why would we use a block pattern versus a block template? It sounds really quick and easy. I can just go and copy that, that WordPress HTML code and drop it in somewhere and be able to use that. Why would I go through the exercise of creating my own nested block, for example? Block templates, to me, block templates are a defined set of blocks that can be used programmatically. And block patterns are combinations of blocks. They're used to produce a layout. And if you were to compare these two items, are they both reusable? Yes. Block patterns, however, you cannot lock a block pattern. When you add a block pattern to the page, it's there. All of the pieces to that puzzle, that pattern that you want to see there, whether it's for a team member or for a testimonial, a cover, a hero cover, section, it's there on the page. It makes it easy to fill all of those pieces out. You don't have to redo anything, but you can delete those blocks from the page. That may not be the right thing for your use case. You may not want people to be able to delete those blocks or move them around. You may want to keep some integrity. So in that case, a block template is more appropriate to use. The ability to nest those blocks, I have been having difficulty within block templates getting smaller blocks to nest inside of columns. So I've been doing it a couple of different ways. I'm sure there's a way to do it somehow, but I haven't solved it yet. But that's part of the fun, is trying to figure out how all of these things work together. Block patterns, however, are nestable. It is a little bit easier to get those showing up. Now, on to block meta. The rise of the meta box came about from the limitation of structuring content in the WordPress classic editor. And I'm sure that you've all worked on sites before or had utilized themes that the content editor sat at the top, and then there were some meta boxes below, whether we added them there with ACF or they came as part of the theme. They enabled us to add a hero image to the top of the page and change a headline, or add in testimonial sections. I used ACF many times to be able to build team pages, or if I was working with nonprofits and needed pages with all of the board of directors. So you have an image and a bio and a link. We could build those types of layouts with meta boxes. The one downside to this is that all of those meta boxes have a ramification on the back end of our site, on the database where things are stored. Namely, it moves what should be in post content into meta. So one of the downsides to that, when we're working with it, it's not so bad. It's really great. It gives us a really easy way for the user to be able to go in and add things to their pages. One of the downsides is what we're seeing now as we go in to change out a theme for a client. The content that's been stored in those meta boxes isn't easy to get to. We can't just change the theme and have everything display on the front end like we would expect. We have to go grab it and somehow accommodate for that in the transfer of information, or data rather. So similarly, one of the things now that with blocks, all the blocks going into post content, there might actually be information on our site that we want to store as meta, and we'll need to accommodate for that as we build our themes. And the way you do that is to you can add some attributes into that data and then be able to pull it out and use it in other places. So that function looks something like this. We're still passing through that array, and this is what we would need to do when we want to add meta to those content pages. This is how we're allowing, since Gutenberg, everything that comes in as a block gets thrown into post content. This is how we make sure that it's allocated to go somewhere else. Now, on to the next part. We're going to, we're 15 minutes or so out, and we're going to boldly go where nobody has gone before.
We have about 10 minutes.
Corny Star Trek.
Eileen.
Okay.
Want to make sure.
Go very, very quickly. Okay. I know. There's a lot to cover here. We're going to go very quickly through the very experimental parts for full site editing. So full site editing is an evolution of the editing experience, allowing areas of the site, including the header, footer, navigation, all to be done directly in the editor. So what we knew before in terms of we had to build these templates into the back end, into our theme structure, the folder structure, and it would get loaded. We will have the ability now to build these in a WYSIWYG format. This is one of the earlier, this particular screenshot is about a month old. Things have changed dramatically. But this is how we would be able to build out a page template now. One of the archive page templates. And inevitably, a user will come in and they want to display all of their block information or all of their post information on the page, but they want it in a masonry grid, and it's showing, you know, one post or one blog post after another. We'll be able to control from within the editor how we can see all of those things. So how will we build block-based themes? And remember, a block-based theme is a theme composed entirely of blocks. The Gutenberg-enabled theme just allows us to add Gutenberg supports for those blocks, but a block-based theme will be everything is composed as a block. We'll use block-based themes, block-based theme templates, full site editing, and global styles. So again, WordPress block-based theme is a WordPress theme created with HTML files built entirely of blocks. The block-based themes are minimal HTML structures that provide containers for rendering blocks in the browser. And again, all of this is experimental. At the moment, these are HTML files, but it very could possibly change to be structured as PHP files. If you want to get involved in testing out full site editing and block-based themes, you can do all of that right now by using the Gutenberg plugin and going to the site editor beta. Again, this is under an experimental flag. It shouldn't be used on a production site. Use it in your local development environment and test it out to see what things are going to look like as we start moving towards the next versions. So this theme structure is very different. You can see, and this is directly from the editor handbook, again, the developer handbook. We have the theme and the template parts. All of these are HTML, they're not PHP. And we're creating templates in similar ways. And I'm going to skip through some of this pretty quickly because I know that there are going to be a lot of questions. So this is very different than how we create templates. They don't have the typical post content. There are a lot of, when you go in to look at full site editing, there are new blocks coming that will allow us to build out all of those individual pieces. So post site title, the post excerpt, post featured image, all of those types of blocks that we don't have at the moment, they are coming down the road. The navigation block is one that you'd be able to get in and test, looking through experimenting with under the full site editing tag. So this is a list of all of those blocks that are coming down for us to be able to use. So to create a block theme template, we would go under Appearance, Template Part. We would apply styling using the editor. And we would add block style variations and theme CSS. And then copy and paste the code from the code editor into an HTML file and saved in the block templates part folder. That's a real down and dirty, quick way of doing things. As you dig in deeper, it's going to be a lot more. There's more to this as we start to build out more complex themes. And again, progressive enhancements. This is the big hot topic. How do we take what we talked about today in building block templates and block patterns and making them future-proof so that we can easily get them into these new into the new way of doing things with full site editing. So this is still an area that's being explored, and you'll want to keep an eye on that as things move forward. And I have a lot of resources here. I'm going to skip forward through to some of those resources since we're coming up. So again, in the full site editing, nothing here is set in stone. Everything is out there and being tested. If you go out to make.wordpress.org is where you're going to see the posts, weekly posts of all of the meetings and chats and everything. If you want to get involved, you can join there to get into the Slack channels to learn more about what's going on and contribute and test. Theme experiments, there's a link here if you want to go out to GitHub and grab the, there are some themes that are ready for full site editing that you can try with under that experimental flag. So just hit that little link. Great resources, start learning. This is the big, here's my soapbox. This is what I need you to take away from my talk. Because themes are changing, that doesn't mean that we sit back and we just wait for the dust to settle. That means we need to get out there and start learning about how things are working, make sure that we're ready to provide the best information to our clients to help them make educated choices as they want to update their sites, to stay in the know. I have a lot of links here in the next couple of slides. These are current, this is current information, so editor features for 5.5, this is what's available now. Take a look at this post from Riyadh on the 8.2 release notes. It tells you everything that went in and what the changes are for this particular release of the Gutenberg plugin. There's a great post by Anne McCarthy, Ways to Keep Up with Full Site Editing, and she lists out all of the different places that you can go to get information to keep up to date with what's what the next steps will be. Also, take a look at the block editor handbook, theming for the block editor. All of these links are great great resources to be able to get started and walk you through testing out what these new features are going to look like. And review the projects and the PRs that are out on GitHub. Global styles, full site editing, block patterns, plugins, and global styles. These will link you out to the GitHub issues boards that contain all of the different issues for those projects as they're being worked on. And again, if you're in, if you're on make.wordpress.org and you want to join in on a meeting, core editor meeting is on a lot of meetings are on Wednesday. I usually attend the Wednesday core editor meeting. There's a block-based theme meeting in the theme review channel. So take a, take an hour or so, attend a meeting. You don't have to say anything, just read what's going on in Slack. And if you're not able to, the notes for all of those meetings get posted out to the website. So some shout outs to the team members that are working and have given me information, and the design team too. I left out some names, I'll add them in. So thank you. Again, you can get the slides on GitHub. They'll be on Sidetrack Studio, and it's just Eileen. Amanda, do we have, I think I made it, 3:45, right?
Yeah, so I don't think we'll have much time for any questions, but I think,
I'll be in the Slack channel, and
okay,
anybody can tweet at me if they have questions, and I'm happy to answer.
Great. Thank you so much, Eileen. And I think some of the questions were actually answered like later on in your presentation. There's some questions about where to get tutorials and walkthroughs about block patterns. So there's, I'm assuming, something in there with those. Everyone, we will have our closing remarks us in either track. Those will be playing. And just a reminder to go over to WordCamp Kent and leave feedback for all the speakers over the weekend. So thanks again, Eileen. This is amazing. So much information. Thanks again.
Too much information, yes. But thanks everybody for joining me.